So breathing buildings does what it says on the tin. We make buildings breathe. So we actually have changed the world of construction, really. We help buildings use natural ventilation rather than the old way of ventilating buildings using a lot of fan power. When we did a research program at the University of Cambridge from about 2000 to 2005 on how do you go and create a low energy building, we identified that there was just an enormous amount of energy being used by fans in the form of air handling equipment on the roof of buildings to blow the air in, suck the air out, and distribute that within a building. And there was a massive opportunity to reduce the energy consumption of buildings by doing things differently. And in large part, that's using the forces of nature, wind and buoyancy, to do the job for you. It comes for free. That was the first reason why we got excited about how you go and sort of change the world of buildings. But latterly, I've also learned that the benefits of natural ventilation go far beyond that of just simple energy. It provides an amazing environment where people are then not working in an institutional, stuffy, perhaps regular way, but are now working in a transformational place where the air quality is staggeringly wonderful, and even the vagaries of nature, a gentle breeze blowing through the space, can be very, very stimulating. And there is research, mainly done here in the US that I'm aware of, where productivity increases enormously as a result of plentiful amounts of fresh air. So the challenge really was, how do you go and make natural ventilation appealing, not just when it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees centigrade outside? We are working for not just the shoulder months of spring and autumn, but we are living in the depths of winter and the peaks of summer. So the challenge was, how do you go and create a low energy, naturally ventilated solution for a building that can work both in the depths of winter and the peaks of summer? And we did that by identifying that in modern buildings, after you've insulated them well, you've then realized that the building itself, with all the heat gains in the form of heat gains from people, IT, lights and solar, is a furnace. So the challenge was curing a cold draft using the heat gains that we already have in a space, rather than curing a heat gain with a radiator, which is what the historically previous way of doing things with natural ventilation had been. So we invented something, which was we're going to mix the incoming cold air in winter with enough of the warm room air to mitigate the cold drafts.
So a heat exchanger?
It's in large part not a heat exchanger, because conventional wisdom would say exchange would normally imply that the outgoing air is actually giving up its heat to the ingoing air and it leaves at a lower temperature. No, buildings are such furnaces these days that you don't need to have a heat exchanger, which is expensive in terms of fan power. All you need to do is use the heat that is already there. We find that if we provide ventilation to buildings, the buildings will not need any heating until the outside temperature is below freezing. And we spend so few hours below freezing in most places in the developed world that in fact the value of a heat exchanger is minimal. In fact, it hurts you once you're above freezing because you use more fan power.
And what kind of buildings can you apply this technology to?
Buildings which are designed so that people, you and I, are within reasonable proximity of an outside wall, a roof, or a large atrium, can be naturally ventilated. That's most building types. And the critical thing about our technology is that it uses the heat gains in a space. So it works particularly well when the winters aren't severely cold and where there are reasonable heat gains in a space. So we currently focus on the non-domestic market in more temperate climates. So we don't go to the depths of Siberia and suggest that you can naturally ventilate in winter. But if you take me to temperate northern climates in Europe or West Coast US, some parts of other parts of the US, where we don't have dramatically cold winters, the technology is beautiful.
And it's primarily new build at the moment, isn't it?
We've done most of our work in new build just because it's easier to make it work in a new building. However, we are now doing some refurbishment projects as well. The trick with a refurbishment project is that you need to have somebody on board who is happy not just to replace the old with like the old but working. You want to have somebody who's prepared to make a change to the building. And a recent one was a beautiful old barn near Cambridge, which is a music centre, and they wanted a silent ventilation system. They didn't want to hear the fans, and they wanted it to be low energy, low maintenance. So they've used us, and we've refurbished a beautiful old barn, which is now a wonderful music studio.
And I imagine the students are very grateful. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Shaun Fitzgerald from Breathing Buildings. Congratulations on being one of our 2014 New Energy Pioneers.
Thank you.